Thank you, Robert, for your introduction. Yeah, this paper is very preliminary, the results. This is joint work with Keer. And in this study, we look at the effect of globalization on manufacturing employees, occupational mobility, employment, and earnings. So here's a little bit about the introduction. First of all, the mid-skilled manufacturing employment has experienced a rapid decline in many advanced countries over the last few decades, as you well know. And according to this labor market theory, workers who are working in sectors that are exposed to some sort of import competitions, they may have to be allocated, the workers, and according to that, the wages may decline as there will be an increase in supply of labor in other sectors. And here is some graphic to show how the Finland-China trade, export and import, has developed over time. So in 1993, it was like 250 millions. And as you well know, China became the member of the World Trade Organization in 2001. And after that, their imports from China increased substantially. And there's also been quite smooth increase in exports as well from Finland to China. And a little bit about the previous literature. This is not a new topic in the previous literature. So there's been several papers that have looked at the effects of trade, but they mostly focus on quite aggregate level dynamics. Say they look at the effect of China import competitions at the regional labor market level, at the industry level, or at the firm level. For example, Bernard and fellows, they use US data, and then Utar and Torres Ruiz, they use the Mexican data using plants, and they look at the effect of import competitions on the plant level. And then Autor and fellows, they published this paper in American Economic Review, and they focus on commuting zones. So they focus on commuting zones that were exposed to China import competitions and compared the workers working in those commuting zones to other commuting zones that were not affected by the China import competition. And recently there has been some papers that focus on more individual level, but there are papers that are using a more structural approaches, like Ashornia and Pessoa. I guess we are trying to, in our paper, we're trying to put more causal interpretation on the effect of China import competition at the worker level. So here are some papers that are most relevant into our setting. Is the Utar paper that was published in Restat, I guess. So she uses data on Danish textile workers, and she finds that the China import competitions has decreased the workers working in textile industry. It has decreased their wages and both employment, and then some people switch to service sector, which has been growing at the same time. And then there is another paper from Autor and fellows. So they use their earnings data from the US, and the way they create their treatment and control group is a little bit difficult to explain in here. But they find a similar type of evidence that the workers working in these manufacturing firms that are exposed to China import competitions, well, in the long run, they have smaller wages and they face a higher risk of non-activity. And then there is Lurbeck and Ude. They use this German data, and they split their manufacturing firms based on their activity level in import and export. So they are like high import, high export firms versus high import, low export firms. And they don't find much evidence whatsoever. And then there is the Spanish data, and the authors are Donazo, Martin, and Minondo, and they find that the competition from China increases the unemployment probability, but I am not that convinced about this paper because I'm not quite sure if they are able to evaluate any causal evidence, because the way they handle their control versus their treatment group. So what we are doing, what we are planning to do in this paper is that we study the effect of trade shocks on the outcomes of manufacturing workers in Finland. So the previous literature has mostly focused on employment and earnings, but instead we look at also the occupational mobility. This has been mostly absent in the previous literature, so we don't just focus on whether the wages of those manufacturing workers decrease or increase after import competition shock, or what happens to their employment, but we are actually interested in what happens to those workers, whether they shift from mid-level occupations to high-level occupations, whether they drop into low-level occupation, and so forth. So I'm basically interested in also occupational mobility. So in this paper, we first follow UTAR exercise, and we first focus on textile industry workers in Finland, and we replicate her exercise using Finnish data, but we are planning to add other manufacturing sectors in this analysis as well, besides this textile industry. And then what we are planning to do is that because the Finnish firms, Finnish manufacturing firms are different, because of course, if I have a firm that I produce some sort of an item that I export abroad, and then China starts to China starts to export similar type of product, so it might be bad for my company. But on the other hand, if I have a company that I able to buy cheaper intermediate products from China, so it might be actually good for my company. So we are gonna distinguish between firms that buy cheaper intermediate products from China to those who actually export final products. But this is not completed yet, so I only show the preliminary results for firms that produce final products. So the data, first of all, we have this well-known fleet, so Finnish longitudinal employer-employee data, total data that match all the employees with their firms. So using 2000-2014 time period. And we use firm data because instead of establishment level, because the other data sets includes only firm level information. So in fleet, we have information on wages, employment, and all the important background characteristics, as you well know. And then we have customs data, and it includes firm-specific, very detailed information on products that has been exported or imported. And then we have Broadcom data on industrial inputs and outputs. The inputs, I guess it was one problem is that the customs data, the goods level is CN category, And in Broadcom data, the industrial inputs, they are CPA category. And in data on outputs, they are Broadcom category. So there are at least three different kind of classifications, and it's not that straightforward to combine these together. So the crosswalk codes, they are not that like perfect. So it's been quite difficult to match these data sets together. And then there is also this Comtrade data that is available in the internet. So it contains country pair and detailed goods classification. For example, what Germany imports from China and exports. So a lot of different kind of data sets combined together. So the variables, so the outcome variables, of course we are interested in these, what happens to the manufacturing workers' wages, employment, unemployment, non-activity, and educational attainment. But first of all, we are interested on occupational mobility as well. And here we group the classifications using this Asemoglu author task measures. So we group these occupations into 4 different occupation groups based on tasks. So abstract, so high level, manager, professional technicals, and then to routine cognitive workers, basically like clerical workers, routine manual workers like industry workers, and then low-level service workers. So there's like cleaners or some sort of elementary workers. And then we have control variables, so like the basic controls, age, gender, education, years, and so forth. And of course, some of the pre-treatment firm-level characteristics to make the firms to be as similar as possible. So size of the firm and firm's turnover as well. So we have like 2 different kind of methods, I mean, at least now. So the first one is we follow the Uthar's exercise and use apply the difference and difference estimation method. So here we focus on Finnish textile manufacturing workers. And then there were some quota removals in 2001 from some products. And for example, the China quotas were removed in 2001, for example, for work clothing and underwear, but not, for example, from jackets. So they are like very detailed, very detailed categories from which textile or clothing products their quotas were removed and from which were they not. And the work I did in here was totally brutal and manually. I checked through all these products in detail. So then there is this treatment group. So those workers who worked in those firms that were exposed to this China quota removal. And the control group includes those textile workers who worked in firms that were not exposed to these quota removals. So then there is this CS, China shock dummy, and there's this post year dummies, as you well know. And then there's the outcome, occupational mobility, wages, earnings, and so forth. And then I guess this is more like a robustness check, but we also use this variable that is actually in previous literature has been used as an IV. So, for example, Nilsson Hakkala and the fellows use this instrument, well, this variable as an instrument for outsourcing and offshoring. And we have also previously used this variable as an instrument for international trade. So, and in here we actually use it in a reduced form. So what it actually is? So we create this firm product country level measure of exposure to increased import from China, and this applies to all manufacturing sectors. So shocks in trading environment may have firm-specific impacts depending on how engaged the firm is in trade with a specific affected goods category. So it is word import demand. So it's basically country sees total imports from China minus the import from Finland. And then these are summarized together, and then these are weighed by the Finnish firms' engagement into this CK combination. So like I said, it doesn't make any, it's very difficult to interpret the variable because it is something like millions of euros and there's some weights. Like I said, this has been previously used as an instrument, but we use this in reduced form. And basically these results are like additional results or results presented in appendix. So, okay, first of all, I forgot the summary statistics. So here are the results for the different diff estimates using only textile industry. And there are 9,000 employees in the control and in the treatment group, and the pre-treatment wages were similar in both groups. So what we can see, so here are the CS, so the dummy for the China shock. And here are all the workers working in textile industry. So what we can see actually, so in the long run, they have about 2% less weight. Well, they earn about 2% less compared to the control group. They are less likely, well, the China import competition, the shock increases employment, decreases employment, increases unemployment, increases non-activity, and also increases the probability that people get further education. But what is interesting is the occupational mobility variables in here. And actually, it shows that the people are less likely to stay in the same occupation, but they're actually more likely to move up in the job hierarchy. However, there are differences between these occupation categories. Abstract workers actually are worse off. In the long run, they earn about 8% less compared to the treatment group, control group, I'm sorry. But for example, for routine cognitive workers, they earn about 10% more. And this effect is actually driven by the fact that routine cognitive workers are more likely to move up move from routine cognitive to abstract tasks. So actually, there's nice, well, quite interesting differences between different worker groups. For routine manual workers, there's a slight negative effect on wages. However, there's a positive impact on moving up in the job hierarchy, but also there is a positive impact of moving downwards the job hierarchy. So there is like moving both down or up. And the situation is not that bad for service workers, but I guess the number of observation is quite low, so we are unable to detect any statistical significances in these estimates. So basically, the results are quite intuitive. China import competition decreases wages. Employment increases unemployment, non-activity. But on the other hand, there are differences between these, across different occupation groups. And I guess that the routine cognitive workers are actually, the situation is actually quite nice for them. And here are the results using this IV. As you can see, the estimate of this, it doesn't tell anything basically, because I guess we need to think about how we present these estimates. Is it like fractions of deviations or something like that? But these are highly robust, and these includes all the manufacturing industries plus the textile industry. And based on these results, China import competition decreases employment, increases unemployment, increases non-activity, and also that the routine cognitive workers are more likely to move to abstract, high-level, high-wage occupations. But on the other hand, the results are not robust for wages. And I don't know why is it, but for other outcomes, the results are highly robust. So, and this is what we should do next. So we will compare the firms that import intermediate products versus firms that produce products to trade. So this will be okay. And here the summary of these preliminary results. So at least in Finland, manufacturing workers who are exposed to China trade experience a significant and persistent decline in employment and rise in unemployment and non-activity rate, except among those low-level service workers. However, trade also causes increase in workers' school enrollment, particularly among these high-level abstract workers. And this is highly interesting result that there seem to be some heterogeneity between the results, because especially routine cognitives like former clerical workers, they seem to adapt more easily from these trade shocks because they, for example, compared to routine manual workers, they have a higher probability to move up in the job hierarchy. So this is what we have done so far, and all the comments are welcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Terhi. Thank you for keeping time. We have time for one question, so two of the, if they're quick, and Tuomas has a chance of prepare your stuff while we are taking in these comments. So, who has the most urgent comment at the moment? Aki, it's. Probably. Oh, wait.
Hi, this is Aki Kangasharju. These are probably short-term effects or
long-term, from 2002 to 2014, so 12 years. Long-term effects.
But what is the time lag? 4 years, you said?
14.
So my question is, what is the time lag between the
2000,
China trade competition and the outcomes that you observe?
The treatment control groups are from the 2000 before the China becoming the WTO member, and then we look at the outcomes from 2002 to 2014, so 13 years. So these are all long-term effects. Yes.
Other questions? It's very interesting that people are forced to go to better jobs. So yeah, very interesting result. We are excited to hear what else will happen to those in the future.